Hey, you remember that video I made yesterday about blue boats and Robinhood? Notice that they had on the site. Well, interestingly enough, when we go there today, it's no longer there. So maybe they watched the video. I'm just kidding. But anyways, I wanted to talk about one interesting topic for tomorrow. So there's rumor DFV may be exercising his calls or whatever, which could cost or will cost cash out of pocket for him. But obviously, he's down significantly after today's move and the past few days. But if he were going to exercise, like if I were him in this position and knowing the earnings, like the actual earnings announcement is tomorrow after hours, despite them having a de facto earnings announcement, a few days ago, despite that, the real earnings announcement is scheduled for tomorrow. And for anybody that's traded options for a while and who's seen the game, has skin in the game, you know that after the earnings call announcement for especially stocks with like GameStop with high IV is typically crushed right after the earnings call. So if we go look at the GME options chain real quick, and we look at the IV, that's a pretty high. And whenever GameStop runs, this is not uncommon, but the IV is high, relatively high. Speaking, if you look at the IV percentile, which measures the volatility against itself for like the past year, it's well within the top 10%. Meaning, the IV right now is higher than it's been since the last year, essentially. But after earnings, what's going to happen is they're going to crush that IV, meaning the IV is going to be reduced significantly. And whenever that happens, the value of your contract is going to decrease substantially. So if I were DFV and I believe it's $20 calls that he's holding, if that's correct, he's in the money, and as long as he's in the money, he can exercise those calls. So being in the money, IV is essentially going to go down after earnings. It's going to hurt the value of his calls significantly after IV crush. Basically, anything left alive in the chain is going to be significantly damaged from a price perspective if the IV gets crushed, because that's how IV works. IV with higher values equals higher pricing of the option. All Greeks increase with an increase in implied volatility, and all Greeks decrease with a decrease in implied volatility, and this includes price. So price goes up with IV, price goes down with IV. That's just the mechanics of how options operate. And that being said, since tomorrow is the earnings announcement after hours, if we were going to run at all, it would make the most sense to me for us to pump tomorrow. Pump titties up, lure everybody in for the IV crush trap, then the following day, boom, crush the IV. So if he were going to exercise, if I were him, it would be tomorrow. That would be the day. Otherwise, you may just let him expire worthless, because you actually end up saving more money that way. And at the end of the day, if his options expire worthless, he's still fucking rich. So, it is what it is. But I'm just speaking from a strategic standpoint. If it were me and I had the options in the money, I had the choice to, exercise them or just hold out and see what happens, to see if maybe it runs later this week or next week. They do expire next Friday. To me, if I were actually intending upon exercising the calls, tomorrow would be the day I would do it, especially if we ran. Because if we run, he can exercise the calls, take the profit on the shares, or take the difference profit on the shares, and all is good. And he regains some of his, intrinsic value back from the original option position. But, just a thought. But the next settlement window is, the 14th through the 16th, I believe, this month, around the mid-month. So that's something to take note of. But yeah, chances are the IV is going to be crushed tomorrow after hours. And that is something to be aware of, especially if you're trading options. So just wanted to point that out. But other than that, not much else. AMC, they kind of got fucked over on their end of things due to the halts and whatnot. But there's a time coming for them as well. It's a cycle, right? It's not like the AMC crowd is losing out. It's just not their time yet. But still monitoring that closely. I think it's getting close, but there's just no way to tell right now. We did get a MACD cross green on the monthly, which we all know what happened the last time that occurred. It led to the biggest run in its fucking history. So Don't lose faith there. It doesn't mean the stock's oversold. That's no question about that. It's just a matter of time, and it's just a game, but it's still there.